It's time for Saturday with Seniors, where you'll learn firsthand about what life was like in our area years ago. Saturday with Seniors is brought to you by Hemingway General Contractor. Saturday with Seniors airs every Saturday at 10 a.m. here on KC 101. Hemingway General Contractor can sell and install a 95% efficient Luxair furnace, lowering your gas bills. Plus, Luxair has the best warranty around. 10 years on both parts and labor, and Hemingway's includes this awesome warranty with your furnace package for free. Today's guest, we have Howard Hughes here. In 1948, Howard Hughes was born in the backseat of his parents' car on the way to the hospital. He moved to a farm near the canyon and attended the Stony Fork School, the Charleston School, and later the Wellsboro High School. It's time now for the two-part series with Howard Hughes, right here on KC 101, brought to you by Hemingway General Contractors. When it's time for a new furnace, call Alan or Brian at Hemingway's and ask about their Luxair furnaces and their financing options. Sales, installation, and service of all furnaces with parts on hand for repairs. Call or text Hemingway General Contractor at 662-6997. And without further ado, we've got Howard Hughes in our studio. So when you were a kid growing up, did you have electricity in your very first house?
No.
So you went from having no electricity.
But a month later, we had a light bulb in each room.
Uh-huh.
And an outlet in each room.
So your house was wired just about the time you were born. And the old houses, a lot of them still to this day, have one set of outlets in each room. No closets, just wardrobes.
Yeah, we didn't have closets. No, that we had wardrobes, yeah. And we had an attic, and Dad fixed that up to where you could put your winter clothes in the summer and the summer clothes in the winter.
Mm-hmm. And the mothballs year-round.
Yeah, year-round, yeah.
So was an outhouse then in your first house?
First, second, third.
Several of your houses you're talking about then?
The third house.
Third house, okay.
Third house. Just before we moved out, Dad put a bathroom in there.
Just as you were leaving.
Just as, because it sold more.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to fathom that people that were in Vietnam, flying helicopters or in giant airplanes, literally, 14, 15, 16 years before that, you're living in a house where you're putting on your boots and grabbing the flashlight to go to the bathroom at nighttime. A lot changed right in that time period.
It did. And a lot has changed since I graduated school till now.
Mm-hmm. I mean, was there a phone? There wasn't even probably a phone in your house or some of your houses had. You moved so many times it gets confusing here.
It was
a party line?
I'm trying to think. 56 or 57, we got our first phone. And it was a party line, We had 2 longs and a short was for us. And for our next door neighbors, it was 3 shorts. Mm-hmm. So, but there's probably 15 to 20 houses on a line. So after a while, you knew everybody's.
Today's generation has no idea what a party line is. It's
no.
Actually, you got to go. A lot of people don't even know what a home phone is. But back when people had home phones, we had more than one phone. If you picked it up, you heard the person in the other room on the phone. Party line, if you picked it up, you heard the other person on the street on the phone. And the term I learned from several was rubbernecking. That's when you.
That's how you learned all the news. You just listened for a while.
And then your dog would bark in the background and someone would be like, Howard, are you on the phone?
That has happened, yes. Or you'd sneeze or something. Times are different.
Yeah, and
so different.
Rotary phones and all that. So TV, when you grew up, you didn't have TV until you were probably...
I was...
6th grade, I'm guessing.
I would say maybe 5th grade. We got TV, and it was black and white.
Or green and white, the old TVs.
Yeah, well, depending on what color filter you had on it. But Dad got TV for my birthday when I was 6 years old.
Yeah, and you picked up one TV station on it maybe, or 2?
One. Well, we had one on the antenna in one location and one on the antenna in another location. We had 2 channels, 12 and 18, I think it was.
You remember some of the shows you watched in those earlier days? Were you...
Dresden, City of Fashions. There was old-time comics.
Yeah. Did you see the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Oh, gosh, yes. The Ed Sullivan Show every Sunday night.
60% of the country or something saw the Beatles that night. And do you remember, was it as big as people hype it back in time? Was everybody at school talking about it the next day, or was it just like any other thing until after?
Some people were. It's probably like today. There's those that see it and hear about it and everything, and then there's people that don't even know what happened until they went to school the next day. And I was usually one of them.
You got the news the day later.
Yeah, I got the news the next day when I went to school.
Hey, you remember the moon landing?
I do.
1969? I was 6 months old then, half-a-year-old kid.
I was in Vietnam. But
So-
it was a big deal. It was a big deal.
The space race was going on. The Cold War was going on. Vietnam was going on. Polio had just been almost wiped out a little before that. There was a lot of things happening in this world at that point.
I was amazed just in the amount of time Well, I was home on leave for a couple of times, but from the time I left Wellsboro till the time I came back home in 1970, quite a few things had changed. And today, whew, my word.
Yeah. So what do you think about today's world? Any opinions you want to share?
I'm glad I didn't miss it, but I wouldn't want to do it again.
And what do you think the world's going to be like for our kids now when they're
I can't
your
imagine.
age?
I could not even imagine this back when I was a young person.
Yep. Well, I mean, Dunham's department store was there. The Arcadia Theater was there then. Carson Finance was there then. And I'm trying to think how many other places on Main Street have been around for that long.
Commonwealth Bank was there.
Yep, it's another bank now,
Yeah.
but it was a bank. I mean, I
Yeah.
think the two main banks on Main Street were banks then, but
Kench's drugstore was on Main Street.
Yep.
There was a shoe shop on Main Street.
yep, the diner was there under another name.
Yes.
I can't remember off the top of my head.
Shanaker's.
That's it, yes.
Shanaker's Diner. Yes.
And was that a touristy type place back then, or was that more of a locals place back then? Because now it's got the novelty of being
Just-
old in a diner, but when you were a kid, it was newer
just,
and...
it was just a diner.
Yeah.
I mean, really. I mean, it probably was a tourist attraction, but we didn't think of things like that back
yeah,
then.
sure.
We were just a little town out in the middle of nowheres and far enough away from everybody that you had to drive a car to get there. So, yeah,
And you remember the train coming to town?
I do.
Hearing the whistle when it was coming to
I
town?
do.
Because it came a
I
lot
do
more
remember
off. Well,
when
more often than now,
when
obviously.
I was a
but
little kid, yes. I remember the train coming to Wellsboro.
Yep.
Up to the,
the station there and
to the
across from the Wellsboro House on Charleston Street. You're
yeah,
talking about
came there, and
then
then
all
it
the way
went up to
east
the
of Route 6.
Corning Glass Works.
Yep.
And the GLF, or the Agway,
Yep.
used to be up there, and it went up that far.
So you remember the train coming all up the GLF, which was the old Agway, and Corning. Now, did you work at Corning, or did your parents work at Corning Glass?
My dad worked at Corning Glass for 2 or 3 years, and he didn't enjoy
Wasn't
it.
his cup of tea?
No, it wasn't his cup of tea. He didn't enjoy it. But yeah, I remember Dad working there. And when Dad worked there in the summer, I would pick blackberries and strawberries, and he would take them to work and sell them. And we'd save all that money, and then, like, a circus or something came through, or we'd have someplace to go and spend some money. I had money.
The circus used to come to Wellsboro. I've seen old pictures of it. I don't know the time date on that, but I've seen pictures of elephants walking down Main Street, Wellsboro, to pre-promote the circus. Is that what you're referring to, or different?
Yeah, that's what I was referring to. That was about 1952, maybe.
Where did they hold the circus back then? Was it behind the Grange, I want to say, the old Pomona Grange, or where the cemetery is? Or I know we're stirring up a lot of old thoughts here.
Let's see, Carson's construction company was up there. They had a big field, and we parked all the way up. You'd park
So they're bringing
all up along the cemetery.
Lots and lots and lots of people.
Yeah, it was almost like our Laurel Festival, but it wasn't. I think it was later than the Laurel Festival.
So they probably brought the elephants and the whole circus in on the train, is my guess, right? That would be the.
I would
don't know how else
assume,
you'd
yeah.
move elephants
Well,
around.
they had tractor trailers, but they didn't have enough of them to haul everything. So
Yeah.
I'm sure that they did, use the train to bring it in.
Wow. Did you go to the movies much as a kid?
Not much.
Other than just the drive-in, because it was cheap and fun.
Yeah, but as a kid, I didn't really have a lot of getting out like young people do today because I grew up on a farm.
Yeah, I've heard the lot.
know?
So how far out of town were you when you say you grew up on a farm? Most of the,
Kennedyville, which is
further than I'd walk, but maybe you'd walked it before.
yeah,
So you're halfway to the canyon, pretty much.
right on the rim, pretty much. Pretty much,
Okay, so
right
how
on the
often
rim.
did you come to town then? Is like once a week to get groceries? Was that kind of the, other than school?
Mom would come to town once every other week, I think. And we always had a big garden. It was 7 of us kids. So we raised a lot of everything of our own. And Dad just saved his money up, and they bought extra freezers so that we wouldn't starve in the wintertime.
And deer hunting, was that something you did? And fishing and all that?
yes.
I've also got the feeling that back in your day, a lot more high school students partaked in hunting and fishing
Yes.
and the outdoor
Well,
stuff that's here for many reasons.
Back then, you could take your gun on the school bus, give it to the driver, and when you got to school, he'd give you the gun back and your shells. Mm-hmm. And you'd take it in, put it in your locker. That
Yeah.
was the standard way of doing it. And I remember a lot of kids that lived in town that walked, and they'd have their gun slung over their shoulder.
Walk right down
and
Main
walk
Street.
right
yeah.
down and into school
Yeah.
It was a whole different
I had
world.
someone else there who said they brought their gun into shop class just recently on one of these shows because the shop teacher helped them fix his gun because they had to remake a part for it, and that never thought anything different thereof. I mean, it's unfortunate that the world's changed in that way. Although, you know, the way you guys had your guns at school, if ever something bad happened or a bad person got in the school, I think you guys
that's true. If we could get to our lockers, if
any one of you guys could get to your lockers, that person was not going to be going on a...
No, there was nothing rampage like they got going today. None of these school shootouts or anything like that.
And maybe that was part of the reason why, because they knew there was more people armed in school than...
That could be, because come deer season, first day of deer season, there was more guns in that school than you could shake a stick at. I mean, there was just a lot of them.
Well, no one went to school on first day of deer season. That Monday was pretty much a holiday. Wasn't it like Nature Observance Day? Or that's what they called it recently to make it sound nice.
If you were lucky enough to take the first day off.
Yeah.
Then, you know, but then the rest of the time, if you wanted to go to a friend of yours that lived somewhere over in Charleston, you know, you could just take your gun on the bus, put it on his bus, and go to his house and hunt and go back to school next morning. And, you know, I mean, it was just a common thing.
So exercise was easy to come by in your times, whereas today, you see the statistics, and it's not just kids. I mean, people in the United States are spending 40-plus hours a week looking at a video monitor, a screen, whether it's their phone, their computer screen, or their TV, and missing out.
Yeah.
Where was your favorite fishing spot when you were a kid? Did you have a favorite?
Was down Stony Fork, down behind Layton's campground.
At the Stony Fork campground now?
At the Stony Fork campground now. There used to be a hole down there. It was perfect. And a friend of mine, his dad was a supervisor down at Dresser, and I'd just call him. He'd say, I'm going fishing. Dad's going to come home and pick me up and take me down, drop me off. You want to go? I click, hey.
Yep. With no cell phone, there was no way to
there was
communicate.
no cell
I mean, you had to make a game plan ahead of time and stick with it.
And I remember a good friend of mine, John Cooper was his name. Him and I were school buddies, and we'd go to each other's house and stay overnight and weekends. And when he was 13 years old, his dad bought for him a twin McCullough chainsaw motored go-kart.
Oh, boy.
And he lived out at Oregon Hill, down Morris, the other side of Morris. And
down by Ski Sawmill now.
Right.
Everything's now
the Line Range Ski Sawmill. And we took a board and cut it to fit and drilled holes in it and put rope through it and everything. And that's what we hung on to on the back end. One guy rode the motors and the other guy steered it. And we would go from Oregon Hill to English Center.
Down 287.
Down 287.
It had an old name then. It wasn't 287 then.
Yep. But we would drive down. One would drive down to English Center, and then the other one would drive back to Oregon Hill. And we did that up until, I was on the back one day, and Roy Cole, the state trooper, retired state trooper, him and my dad were friends. But I seen him coming, and I just knew. You know, you get that feeling. I hung on, and he finally got up next to us. He didn't want to go past us because he didn't want to scare us, but he was pointing at me. And I hollered up at John, and he barely heard me, and I said, stop. And he stopped. Well, Trooper Cole, he went right by us. But he came back, and he was a happy man. He says, I know you, and I know you. He says, and I know your fathers, and I know where they are right now. And guess what, boys? You're going to load that in the back of my trunk, and we're going to take that with us, and we're going to go see your fathers. Needless to say, we did not have a very good time. But it was more fun riding a go-kart than it was seeing our fathers.
Well, absolutely. You know, and probably you feared your father more than the police officer himself.
Did. But, you know, I think about it now. It's like, boy, I'm glad my kids never did that. They may have. I don't know. But... boy, that is dangerous, really, because that thing would do, it was supposed to do 130 miles an hour.
You were going those kind of speeds, like on a whole tow behind?
Oh, yeah. It was like, it's fun.
Well, yeah.
It was fun.
If everything goes right, it is.
It is, yes. Yep.
What was your first job? Do you remember your first job that you got a paycheck?
My first job was working for a contractor, and he was tearing down the Gailton post office. And this was back in '66, just as soon as school was out. And I went over there and worked the whole summer, fall, and until the winter. And then I took 2 weeks off before I had to go in the Marine Corps. And I don't know, I just earned that money and saved it.
All $5 of it? Do you remember what you got paid?
It wasn't very much. I think, well, it was construction work, and they were making quite a bit of money. I think, if I remember right, it was $1.47 an hour.
That was pretty good money for back then.
I think it was, yes.
We've had quite a few people on the show's first job paid $1 a day, literally, working as a stock boy back in, some of them were a few years older than you, but,
Yes. Most of my jobs, I lucked out. I made pretty good, for the time.
Are you still working now? Are you retired? Or
Well, yes, I'm retired,
Uh-huh.
but I still do as much
Still
as I can.
tinker around with stuff,
Yeah,
huh?
I have 46 acres I can play with,
Uh-huh.
and I have, I don't know,
You still
4
got
or 5 tractors.
And how many McCullough go-karts?
Don't
Twin
have any
engine?
of them anymore, but I've got an old homemade tractor that I bought at an auction that the guy said at 112 mile an hour he shut it down because there's no suspension under it.
They shoot you right off if you hit a bump.
It's when they put the new Lock Haven Road in down there that runs around Lock Haven, the 4-way. And he worked on that back then, and he built this little tractor. It's got a English Ford motor and 2 English Ford transmissions and a narrowed up English Ford rear end. And I think I've had it up to about 75 or 80 out across one edge of the field to the other. And the clutch and the brakes are on opposite sides.
Don't forget.
And I got into that little thing so bad that I wanted to go from, the first transmission was already in high gear, and the second transmission back was in 3rd gear, and I wanted to go for 4th, and I stepped on the left rear brake instead of the clutch.
I hope you had both hands on the steering.
And the only thing going through my mind was, I hope I didn't come up through here this spring and put tracks in the field. Oh, I'd have rolled like a pumpkin.
Wow.
But
So you still have it? It's still runs?
yeah, I still have
Why don't you
it.
bring it to Tiger County Fair? I want to see this in a tractor pull.
I immediately took it back to the barn, and I cut the brakes off, cut the pedals off and everything.
Who needs those?
And the clutch off, and I said, now, when I relocate that, I'll get that back out, but it still runs. I start it 4 or 5 times a year just to hear it run.
Yeah.
It's nice. It's nice.
Well, good. Sounds like you've had quite a life.
I have.
Thank you for your years of service in the military. I appreciate that, and the freedom that you've protected in our country, and the farm work you've done, and some of the crazy things that you did and lived through are interesting to hear about now. And little disclaimer, don't do this at home. It was safe to do in the 50s. It's not anymore.
Not good anymore, but thank you. Yes.
Any words of wisdom that you'd like to share before we wrap up?
If you're going to do something bad, don't get caught.
Okay.
Don't get caught. You have more fun that way.
Think it through. Well, Howard W. Hughes, thank you for joining us. Born in 1948, and appreciate you taking the time to come back and visit us for a second segment here on KC 101. It's been very interesting.
You're welcome.
Hearing your story and everything in your life that you've done, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that edition of Saturday with Seniors, and a big thank you to Howard Hughes for being our guest. It's all been brought to you by Hemingway General Contractor. Give Alan or Brian a call at Hemingway's and ask about their Luxair furnaces and the financing options available. Sales, installation, and service of all furnaces with parts on hand for quick repairs. Call or text Hemingway General Contractors at 662-6997. That's 662